Coast Guard is simultaneously and at all times an armed force and federal agency with safety, security, and stewardship missions. We save lives. We protect the environment. We defend the homeland. As the Coast Guard confronts significant growth in commercial shipping, an expansion in coastal development, and increased maritime activity in the Arctic, it is imperative we adapt to maintain operational excellence.
We're in a radically changed environment. We're in a post-Cold War, post-9/11, post-Katrina environment. We're dealing with a lot broader spectrum of hazards and threats. We've got a lot more extreme weather we're having to deal with. We need a Coast Guard that's more agile, more flexible, and more nimble to deal with a lot of threats that we deal with right now, which quite frankly are agnostic to boundaries and borders. And after 9/11 and watching our performance there and then being the principal federal official at Katrina, I knew the time had come for me to make some bold recommendations on where to take the Coast Guard.
We knew that we had a very desperate situation on our hands with the flooding of New Orleans. What we did in Atlantic area is surge everything that we could possibly surge from throughout the whole Coast Guard to get it down to be able to provide that massive search and rescue effort. So we were able to pick and choose from all over the country, send individual people and aircraft down to New Orleans and integrate them on the spot. One might be from Cape Cod, one from Barber Point, Hawaii. They would meet for the first time, hop into the aircraft, and to proceed to do these incredible rescues. But that came at a cost because we didn't have a preset spare type of a thing in terms of the number of aircraft.
One of the big lessons learned that we had is, although we're very good at what we do when we respond, that we had units from across the Coast Guard that brought different capabilities, and we couldn't fuse their capabilities in an effective way to get the outcome that we were looking for.
We saved over 30,000 people. Many of those were snatched off of rooftops in flooded neighborhoods in New Orleans. That said, what we were doing was kind of ad hoc in its organizational structure. Those lessons learned from that experience, plus learning how to work with FEMA urban search and rescue units and state and local responders, were able to be turned around in the new deployable operations group and our new SAR procedures, and we saw those serve us very, very well in the recent hurricanes, Gustav and Ike, which were much more comprehensively planned and executed and coordinated among all the federal agencies.
Change is a natural part of our history. However, despite our efforts to fix systemic problems in the past, we rarely followed through completely on the proposed concepts.
Modernization is really taking a holistic look at our organization. This isn't a definitive end process. It's a process that we will continue to evolve through and will become what we call a change-centric organization. The most important piece of this is looking at our business practices and trying to standardize all of those.
The Coast Guard modernization forms the framework for a natural progression of change for our services organizational structure, support systems, and business practices to a fully integrated, forward-thinking, and more responsive organization.
When I think about the linkages between OPCOM, FORCECOM, and the DCO organization in the future, I see some key attributes. The DCO organization will set the response and prevention policy. The Force Readiness Command will take that policy and turn it into doctrine and the necessary tactics, techniques, and procedures that will undergird operational excellence. Then the Operations Command will use that information to ensure that every mission is carried out with excellence.
The Deputy Commandant for Operations aligns operational plans, policy, and resources to ensure horizontal and vertical integration across our 11 missions.
The Deputy Commandant for Operations is the merger of operations, marine safety, security, and environmental protection. We previously had those organizations under 2 assistant commandants. But what we found is we didn't have sufficient unity of effort and cohesion across the Coast Guard's 11 mission sets.
The Deputy Commandant for Mission Support will unify logistics support to enable life cycle management of assets from acquisition to decommission and to establish a flexible, responsive human resource system.
We've got a decentralized and somewhat fragmented support structure, and modernization to a very large part allows us to focus our efforts within 5 logistics centers and service centers so that we can really concentrate on providing or delivering our service. DCMS, Deputy Commandant for Mission Support, heads up the entire mission support organization of the Coast Guard as we go through our modernization. And of course, one major component of it is our Surface Force Logistics Center. We'll also have a C4 and Information Technology Service Center and a Shore Infrastructure Logistics Center, an Aviation Logistics Center, and a Personnel Service Center. So those 5 will basically take care of all the support programs within the DCMS purview supporting the Coast Guard.
Today was the day that we established officially our first of 5 logistics centers. We've been doing bi-level maintenance and configuration control and standardized maintenance procedures in aviation for quite a while, but the rest of the Coast Guard hasn't. And by setting up this as a logistics center, it then becomes part of one of 5 that can integrate together as we transform the rest of the Coast Guard.
Mayday, mayday, mayday. Come in, Coast Guard, come in.
The Coast Guard Operations Command will transform the service's command and control structure from a regionally divided construct to a centralized, functionally based organization responsible for Coast Guard operations worldwide.
Currently, we're under a bifurcated system where we have 2 operational commands, Commander Atlantic Area and Commander Pacific Area. While that has worked well for us over the years, it provides 2 sets of procedures, 2 sets of practices, and can create confusion and, quite frankly, be less effective for the Coast Guard because we have assets that are assigned to either area. By going to one operational commander, we have one voice, one face, one person who sort of sets the priorities and establishes how we will conduct our operations and execute our missions.
The Coast Guard Force Readiness Command will enhance operational readiness through service-wide analysis and the standardization of doctrine, training, tactics, techniques, and procedures to best allocate forces for sustainable mission execution.
We hope that FORCECOM will be able to look at the Coast Guard force structure across the board on a global basis and be able to take like units, no matter where they are, assess their readiness comprehensively, and then compare them to other units. This is the first time we have ever put training under one command that's so close to our operations. It's becoming more and more important, as everybody realizes, in Coast Guard operations, because more and more often we're working with state and local agencies, we're working with other DHS agencies, we're working with DoD entities, we're also working with coalition partners. And so having doctrine, which is a description of how we conduct the mission, and having that doctrine be similar across our partners ensures interoperability.
Guided by strategic intent, the Coast Guard's transformed resource management system will achieve our long-term improvement goals through integrated business intelligence and will allow us to achieve a sustainable, unqualified audit opinion on the Department of Homeland Security's consolidated financial statement.
In my world as the Chief Financial Officer, it's all about ensuring that we can get the resources we need, we can apply those resources to the highest risk we face, and then we can fully account for every one of those dollars we get to ensure that every person in our country understands the great value the Coast Guard brings to them each and every day.
As our modernization efforts progress, it is essential that our entire workforce, including our civilian, reserve, and auxiliary members, as well as our external stakeholders, understand where we are going and how they can be a part of this historic change.
For the civilian workforce, this is an exciting time to be in the Coast Guard. Probably the most exciting time of our history. We are changing the Coast Guard to better meet the needs of the American public. And the civilian employees, along with all the other workforces, have been a key part in making these changes.
We have a part-time workforce that requires structured training to maximize the amount of time that is available to them. When you have someone that comes to you twice a month, 2 weeks a year, if you don't have a standardized, formalized training program, you're not as capable of being as efficient in getting the type of capability out of that force.
The net effect that we hope to achieve out of this is that we can deliver service to the Coast Guard sectors and to the boating public in as expeditious a way as possible and to get the most bang for our buck out of our resources that we have as volunteers.
Our service's reputation and success are predicated on the exceptional professionalism and dedication of our workforce. The changes embodied by the Coast Guard modernization represent a necessary and sensible approach to enhancing Coast Guard business practices and will better prepare our members for managing the broad scope of mission sets we face today.
For operational planning, everybody sees everything in this system. From the sector, the district, down to the boat crews. They can all see what's going on with their resources, and that helps them, for the planners, to understand exactly what they need as far as executing the mission, and it helps the mission executors to go ahead and just do it.
We are servants of the American public. We know that the American public has very high expectations of us. We also know that how dependent our economy is on our maritime transportation system. So as we look at how we do our business, we want to be able to look the American public in the eye and say, whatever dollars you give us, they are being well spent.
I think this whole modernization effort is an indication to anybody entering the service today that they're coming into a forward-leaning, forward-thinking organization that is constantly evaluating how we do our business and how we can do it better.
Let me be specific about what we're not changing. We're not changing our core values. We're not changing our guardian ethos.
Yes, this has changed, but this has changed absolutely for the better. And it's not just for the better for the Coast Guard. This is providing better service for the citizens of our country, and that's why we all serve. Commandant has given us an opportunity to mold the Coast Guard so it can absolutely come through with its motto of being Semper Paratus, or always ready, in the future.
The challenges we face today are unprecedented. The Coast Guard modernization represents an overarching strategy to build on our service's strengths while capitalizing on today's technologies and best practices to equip our workforce with the infrastructure and capabilities for sustainable mission execution far into the 21st century. We must position America's Coast Guard to answer the call, to remain always ready, and to execute the mission with excellence.